Have you ever had a relationship with a student where their behavior is so poor and you really want to call in the cavalry of their parents, but you're actually a little bit nervous about how to do that without A, causing problems, 2, lacking confidence in what you're trying to do, and 3, a really great relationship with that parent with respect and trust that will actually allow you to have the conversation you need? Well, in today's episode, we're going to talk about all of that. We're going to connecting with parents and carers to all things Standard 4. Tune in.
Hi, I'm Selena Woodward, and I'm an English and drama teacher, university lecturer, and with edufolios.org, a big-time reflective practitioner. So how can reflective practice help you grow your teaching skills, fall in love with your profession all over again, and help you nail accreditation and teacher registration with less stress and less work? Well, this is the Reflective Teacher Podcast.
Welcome to the Reflective Teacher Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Selena Woodward. How are you this fine, fabulous Wednesday? If you're watching this on the day it came out, I hope that term 2 is going well, a little bit easier than term 1 and all the COVID madness. Although I have to say, we're probably getting used to COVID madness at this point. Today's episode is the final episode in a 3-part series in which we have been exploring parent-carer relationships and their importance in the educative process, the need to be sensitive and why and what that means, and also the 5 ways in which parent-carer relationships can help us to improve outcomes and, of course, therefore, increase impact. The whole time we've been having this conversation, my aim has been to provide you with some professional development that I know many of us have never had. And that is, how on earth do we build these relationships? Why are they important? And how can they help me? Of course, all added with a little twist of which focus areas in the Australian professional standards for teachers can I target as I might be writing and reflecting on my impact when it comes to my relationships with parents and carers. And if you've been listening or watching all of the episodes in this small 3-part series, you'll know that everything I've shared has been heavily influenced by the Education Endowment Foundation's recent paper about parent-carer engagement and its impact on student outcomes. So hopefully you've listened to episode 142, episode 143, and you're hanging out for episode 144, which is all about Standard 4. That's quite handy, isn't it? Standard 4, particularly looking at behaviour management. I want to note that in the paper, one of the things that it says is, and I have this written down here, is carefully designed communication with parents or carers can have a positive impact on parents' beliefs and behaviours. And I share that with you because I know that even in my career, parent behaviour has been challenging, scary, intimidating. I've had some horror stories in my second year of teaching. A parent reduced me to tears at parents' evening. And this parent had been one of my mentors on a prac. And she decided that instead of listening to me about her son and how his behavior was holding him back, she would attack me. That was really hard. I didn't know what to do with that, and I was lacking in confidence. I was in my 2nd year out. She was an old mentor of mine. I was supposed to respect her. Recipe for disaster. And if you ask most teachers, you will hear that we have a story somewhere where a parent has intimidated us, upset us, and it's a sign that we don't have it right. We don't have that trust and that mutual relationship with our parent and carer. Now, don't get me wrong. That's not all down to you. It's down to school policy. Am I right, lead teachers? It's down to training. Am I right, highly accomplished educators? It's down to the whole culture of your site. But as you know from listening to the last couple of episodes, there are little things that you can do. But I wanted to acknowledge parent behavior as we start this conversation about student behavior, because you may also know, you may have experienced a slight connection between the two. In the last episode, we talked about being sensitive to the fact that some parents have had an awful experience of school. And the idea of walking onto site, onto campus to talk to a teacher is too traumatic. We've also got those parents whose experience of school was a waste of time as far as they're concerned, and they're telling their kids the same thing. We talked about this last episode and some of the ways that we can change the narrative there. So I want you to keep all of that in mind, and I want you to start connecting the dots between all these pieces of the research puzzle that have come out, because Standard 4 and behavior management actually is about you having built a beautiful, supportive, mutually respectful relationship with a parent. And that is going to be easier in some cases than it is in others. And you might need support to do that. So I'm just reminding you right now that you are totally okay, even if you've been teaching for 20 years, to seek a colleague to join you on a conversation with a parent whose behavior is hard for you to handle. That is far wiser than going in yourself and ending up like I was in my second year of teaching, in tears and thinking I didn't want to do this anymore. Thankfully, that is not quite what happened. I managed to recover with some good support from the leadership team. All right. But there are parents out there who turn up to school and they have problems. They're worried. They're fearful. Maybe they've been advocating for their child for years and they feel like no one's been listening. And you just feel like another person who doesn't see them, who doesn't hear them, who's dismissing them. I've experienced that as a parent, honestly. All right. So, let's stay curious about these emotions that come up in ourselves and what's going on for our parent and carer. All right, that's my first point today when it comes to behavior. Of course, I'm going to talk about mom and dad too. One of the things I also want to share is context. As a parent, we often don't have the big picture. We don't understand, if you don't tell us as a parent, where our kid sits in the context of a school. So when we talk about things like absenteeism, which, often comes down to behavior management, maybe they're just not rocking up for whatever reason. If as a parent, everyone receives a letter every now and then that says, average attendance rate is blah, your child's attendance rate is blah, that gives me information to understand the context. So when I get a phone call, if I get a phone call saying there's an issue here, I understand what the issue is. So there's a lot to be said about the ways in which we present information, and remembering what we said last episode about doing that sensitively. Don't wait and send me a letter when it gets problematic and just target the ones that are problematic. That's not sensitivity. Let's have a plan where we report that, we celebrate attendance, not draw attention to absenteeism. And then we have another strategy to deal with absenteeisms if we need to. Absenteeisms, I'm sure that's a thing. Do you see what I'm saying? So we've got to be sensitive. We've got to communicate regularly. And the same is true of behavior. Now, having said that, I'm not expecting you to go, 98% of children follow the rules. Percentage of time, no, that's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is clear communications around expectations in behavior, class culture, school culture, both for parents and kids, is actually really important. And I want you to think about how your site communicates about behavior, expected behavior. Do you have a policy for parents? Do you have a policy for your students? What does that look like? And is it consistent from classroom to classroom to classroom? If I came to your site, would I see the same behavior management strategies happening in every classroom? Not all of them, but are there consistent strategies that the kids recognize? We always do this. If this happens and it's a poor choice, this always will be the result. These boundaries make kids feel safe. They know where the lines are. Of course, they're going to test them. And they can make sure that they always receive the same consequence, the same outcome if they do. Having worked in sites where behavior is a massive issue, knowing that we have a consistent approach across the site in key areas really was a game changer. It was also a game changer to communicate that with our parents. Because once we are able to create a sensitive and respectful conversation with our parents, we can get down to conversations like, hey, this is going on at school. Here is the policy that you are aware of. Here are the things we've been celebrating. How can we help Nathan to work within these parameters? What do you see at home? How is that different to what's going on at school? Now, often it's the other way around. As a parent, I can tell you my son will be beautiful all day at school. If he's had, but if it's been struggly days, if he's been masking all day, he will get home and he'll be a rat bag. That's really important information for that teacher, because that means that kid is masking all day and is being like a Coke bottle, shook up. When he gets home, he feels safe and then he explodes. That's one story. But what if the kid is exploding all day at school and then behaving beautifully at home? We need to be able to have relationships with our parents so we can find the pieces of the puzzle, put them together, and work together to help that child feel calm and regulated and able to connect with what's going on in the classroom from a learning perspective. Of course, that's really important. So you can see why having conversations with parents and carers about what's going on at home, what's going on at school, and being partners in that is really important. And you can also understand why communicating the expectations and having policy, if we're looking at lead level here, is also really important. In the Education Endowment Foundation research, they talk about behavior management strategies and interventions in behavior management strategies. And the research particularly focused on one type of intervention that was coming from a really cool place. And I was really excited to read about this because there's a program called, and do let me know in the comments below if you've used this at your site. There's a program called the Incredible Years, and it's aimed at 0, like birth to year 12. And it's written by some amazingly clever psychologists, behavioralists, who specialize in social emotional learning. And I've always had a bit of an issue with the term behavior management. I can remember, and I'm sure I've said this on previous podcasts, many years ago, when I was at uni and I had this one lecturer who's still there, Helen Cousins, love you Helen, loving your work, but over in England where I trained, who used to say things like, we have to train the children are not yet trained. And I'd be like, they are not dogs. I couldn't understand. It really offended me. Of course, as I became a teacher, I understood the importance of routine, of training kids in that routine. So thank you, Helen, you were quite right. All right. But behavior management infers that we're managing a behavior, not a person, not their feelings, not their thoughts. And those of you who've studied behavior management in some detail will know that behavior is usually a symptom of something else. It always is. All right. So behavior management and social emotional learning have very strong connections. And I was really excited to have a look at this program. It's covered in 20 different countries, including Australia. So have you completed or used Incredible Years? I'm going to put the link to Incredible Years and its amazing website in the show notes at edufolios.org/144. Okay, because it's really great. Oh my goodness, we are talking downloadable, editable behavior management plans. And we're talking, what have I listed down here? Behavior charts, behavior plans, feelings dictionaries, so many amazing resources for you and also for parents. They also have an amazing YouTube channel full of videos that you can use in conversations with parents to help them, or to see models of the kinds of things that are happening, that might be happening, that we want to change. There's so much in there. So make sure you head to edufolios.org/144 today and go get the link to that. Go and have a look. Talking to you graduates who've got to look for a range. My God, that site is gold for you. Proficient, looking for some more stuff? Head there. Lead, analyzing policy. Go look at the research. You can cover standard 6 too. HAs, running some PD on behavior management. Maybe there's some stuff in here that you could use to expand your repertoire. Maybe there's an activity you could create, inviting your staff to go check this resource out. Maybe you can come up with a consistent policy or some consistent strategies that you're going to use across your site. It's really valuable. Again, that's the Incredible Years. So that link will be at edufolios.org/144. It focuses, though, on helping us to work together with parents. It focuses on social emotional learning in the wider context. So in this paper that we've been reading, the Education Endowment Foundation's paper on parent-carer relationships and impact in learning, it shares how one school used this program, and your school can sign up for this program too, to share in small group after school sessions with parents. Everyone was invited. Of course, you want to target particular families. And we've talked before about how it can be really hard to get those families on board. That was in a previous episode. Go have a listen. But, you're going to run this PD. And what they did is they shared some of the little video vignettes from the YouTube channel to help parents look at behavior. So early childhood people, there are resources on there around allowing the child to lead the play. I can remember having to learn that myself. Letting the child explore, not taking over the play. All the way up to age 12. There's resources from 0 to 12, remember. And so in these workshops they ran with parents, they started with the video vignette, then they met and they talked about what they learned from that, what was interesting. And then there's like a role-playing exercise where they practice whatever it was that they liked, that they were learning from that vignette. So what happens is we encourage those same behavior patterns, those same kind of conversations at home as are happening in school. So if we're teaching self-regulation, we're teaching emotional literacy, we're giving parents the tools they need to have those conversations at home, and they are the same conversations at school. Consistency in both locations. Remember what we said in the first part. Communications home need to be actionable for parents. That's what the research said. Give them things they can do. So this connects beautifully back to that. This gives them resources that they can use at home to make their lives easier at home and consistent at school. And you can imagine if we can start to build relationships with parents and carers where we're swapping information about how our kids are behaving in both locations, we're solving puzzles, the puzzles of our kids together, and we're learning how to be consistent, you can imagine how much easier that will be for the child to feel safe, secure, understood, and seen. Same with mom and dad sometimes too. So that goes straight back to 4.3, doesn't it? About behavior management, expectation, that kind of thing. I guess to wrap up this 3-part series, I want to finish by reminding us of why we're doing this. The key, and it's the hardest key, to great parental relationships, parent-carer relationships with teachers, is that reciprocal nature. The key is to understand the reason we want to have this relationship is because we are all working to support someone who is really important, and that is a child. And we need to be able to work in partnership with the parent and carer where possible, okay, to enable that child to have the best outcomes possible, to give us the information we need to increase our impact on that kid. Whether that being learning how they are, how they think, how they see the world through their parents' eyes, just to inform our practice, whether that's because we want to safeguard that child because things are not right. There's the other side that we spoke about in the first episode. Whether it's because we're looking for resources to support what we're doing, and some of the parents are great for that. Parent teachers associations, that kind of thing. Whatever the reason, and we listed 5 in that first part, if we don't have this mutual respect, if at any point you allow yourself to armor up and get defensive because you're feeling uncomfortable, it's going to break it. And I have been in situations where relationships are broken and it's really hard for anyone to help that child anymore. And that's really serious. It can be really detrimental for everybody. So I really encourage you to seek the support that you need. HA and lead, let's think about how we can write policy, how we can evaluate how this is running at our site, how we can share our knowledge, how we can do research and bring that back to our site, how we can fill that gap. Remember what we said in the first episode? 10% of educators have received professional development on how to build relationships with parents and carers. Just 10%. Can you do something about that? Could that be a story of practice for you? Proficiency, people who are left uni or working towards proficiency. This is an opportunity to really reflect on what's available to you, what you need, and where you can find support. Wherever you are in your career, always lean on a colleague, and it really has nothing to do with years traveled. Whoever's going to have your back in a complicated situation, make sure you feel supported and guided. And I hope that you've taken away some really practical ideas and resources. If you haven't done so already, make sure you head right back to episode 142, grab the resources there, then go to 143. Grab the resources. So many practical ideas in each podcast. And a big thank you to the Education Endowment Foundation for doing this amazing piece of research and summarizing and sharing these findings with us in such an accessible way. That's it for our 3-part series on parent-carer relationships. I'll see you next time for the Reflective Teacher Podcast. Take care.